Honorable Semuju, I'm not sure he'll put on the FDC. For me, if you give me one, I'll put it on. I have in the studio Moses Yarahanga as well. Good morning.
Good morning, Oscar, my colleague in the studio. I haven't seen Semuju for a long time. I haven't seen my professor also for a long time. And the listeners out there.
Yeah. Okay, and then in the studio, I have two guests. I have Perry Aritua. Perry is an advocate and with an NGO, Uganda Women's.
No, the Women's Democracy Network, but I also belong to the Uganda Women's Network.
The Uganda Women's Network. Okay, and the Women's Democracy Network. Glad to have you again. We had you here a while ago.
Yeah, sure.
2-3 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
Good to have you back in 2020.
Perry resurrects with the election.
Perry resurrects with the election.
It's because you're based in Kampala. But we do a lot of work in the district. So good morning everyone and Happy New Year to the listeners.
Brilliant. And of course, Moses Yarohanga's professor is here, Musa and Devesa. Thank you so much for coming to Gang this morning, Professor.
Thank you, and good morning to you all gangsters. Good morning to you listeners. Happy New Year and Happy Democratic 2021.
Did you say democratic?
Yes.
Meaning?
Meaning that I want people to aspire to be democratic.
Right. Okay. Let's start exactly there with the democracy elections coming up. When I was saying, technically you can no longer campaign in your constituency because last week on Saturday, all of that was banned.
And
at
the time the announcement
I hope you appreciate this action because it was taken to keep you safe from COVID.
No, this was political. So at the time the announcement came, I was actually planning to go to 2 villages in Goyoge the following day. I had finished mounting my public address system on the truck, and then the announcement came. So I had to cancel that particular event because police had already called me and said, if you come, first we're going to take the vehicle, 2, we're going to arrest you. I don't mind being arrested, but I mind getting people arrested. Sometimes it takes longer to process them through courts, sometimes also the beating. So since then, I have not held any meeting, any campaign meeting. I don't know whether they will allow us to hold some meetings to prepare for polling, which is about, I think now, about 12, 13 days from now. This decision, Oscar, had nothing to do with health. And that's why it was announced the way that it was. Because ordinarily the Minister of Health should have been, because she's the one responsible for the Public Health Act, under which all these measures have been announced and I presume gazetted. So if there is a particular danger in the 13 districts that were announced, the Minister of Health should have announced measures that are going to curtail all sorts of meetings, including churches and mosques, weddings, funeral, markets, everything. But this time, for the first time, since the pandemic struck, it is the Electoral Commission announcing that there is a danger in 13 districts and therefore campaign meetings are banned. So that's why I treat this as not a decision to enforce health measures, but a decision to shield Mr. Museveni, Tibuhaburwa, and his NRM people from a campaign in Kampala and Wakiso and in all the urban centers. And it came at a time when almost all candidates were completing campaigns in other parts of Uganda, and they are going to concentrate on Kampala and Wakiso. I saw a story, it must have been in the Observer, that the number of voters affected by this decision is estimated to be about 6 million. So these are the areas where there will not be campaigns. And the coincidence, because Mr. Museveni, as he said on TV, he deployed the military, and within the same areas, they started removing our posters. And for me, I was unlucky because he came to commission a road in Chira. And you know Museveni is he doesn't want to see photos of other people. So what they did, billboards, all the posters, they were all cleared by the military and in uniform. And if you happen to be around the site that they are clearing, you also did not escape some chiboko. So they removed, and not only mine, because I was in Mukono, I saw Moses removed. I was in Senyu the other day on TV and told me even he's in Nakawa. So they stop you from holding campaign meetings, they remove your posters.
And you can't go to a radio station, apart from Capital.
The radios in Kampala can host you. It's only up country where they have a problem. I have not had a problem with the media in Kampala. I have gone to, okay, I have many offers to go to radio stations. I can't go to all of them. So in Kampala, we don't have a problem with hosting opposition. The problem is up country.
Okay.
So the only avenue now remaining is maybe social media before it is shut, and I know that will be the last act. Facebook and Twitter, they're all going to be shut like it was last time. So that's how we are going through the campaign now.
Let's find out from
No
Perry.
campaign meetings, posters are being removed by the military. The one that came to remove mine are moving with 2 trucks. They remove, put on the truck.
Perry, you heard from Honorable Semuju. What he's saying is he cannot campaign physically, and his posters are regularly taken down.
Is the person talking when the show now ghost? They're saying you cannot campaign physically because the campaign can be already. You can
Campaigns
They
targeted
cannot campaign
audience. You don't
physically.
go and speak to no audience. Now who am I
His
speaking?
posters are being
Possibly I
taken
think the
down.
radio is not a...
So I know you're not advocating for men, but advocating for women out there, but your democracy DNA. Where are you operating from, and has this ban applied to the people that you advise on democracy?
Thank you, Oscar. You know, in every election there are rules. We all know that. That's why you have a constitution, you have the Presidential Elections Act, you have the Parliamentary Elections Act, and the rules are really clear that all candidates will have their posters up so that we are able to know them as voters, and that because we are operating within COVID-19, there are a number of new regulations, guidelines that have been issued by the Electoral Commission. The only downside is at times, as we observe the election, you find there is selective application of the law. And it only didn't happen during the current general elections that are ongoing, but even during the NRM primaries, because we did observe the NRM primaries. Some of the police, it seemed, favored certain candidates. So even during the NRM primaries, you'd find them applying the laws selectively. Now that, for me, is worrying for a country which is attempting, to hold elections as one of the ways to hand over power from one leader to another at all levels. Because voters have a right to listen to these candidates regardless of their affiliation. And as far as we know, these are nominated candidates. So when you see the laws being applied selectively, it is worrying because it is a disservice to the voter who has to make a decision on polling day. But when the guideline for the 11 districts was issued, the EC did not issue an alternative in terms of how these candidates should campaign. In fact, I think the EC chairperson came out 3 days after the guidelines to say, look, the candidates can still use the other methods to campaign. Now, not all candidates can afford to be on these media platforms. It's the Honorable Semujus who are known, who are incumbents, who may have the opportunity. You have a number of new candidates who may not be able to access these facilities. So that is the downside, because at the end of the day, it is the voter who actually loses out in terms of hearing what these candidates have to say. And we also know that there are areas where these radio frequencies do not reach adequately. So you'll find and here I'll speak slightly about the women. By 8 p.m. and a number of these prime time shows, women are doing so many other things. So the other opportunity which they have to listen to these candidates is physical. That's why you'll find some of them going to these meetings to hear what these candidates are saying. So they have been denied that opportunity. So it's just sad that we will go to the polls and we will not know some of these candidates. In fact, I know what may happen is people may just vote depending on the party these candidates come from. So it denies us an opportunity to listen to these candidates and to really hear their agenda in order to make a decision. For me, that's the downside I see with all this selective application of the law. And it's not only in Kira, because our observers in other districts have told us that what other candidates are now doing is to put their posters very high up on the electricity poles, which is also a danger to themselves. Because when you put it in an accessible place, you'll find your posters clear. It's unfortunate, and for me, I see it as I see that as a setback in our democratic path, and it's really against the laws. We should all allow these candidates to campaign, because in 2005 we said we'll have a multi-party system. I think we did not prepare ourselves for the principles that must conform to a democracy, including the fact that we can belong differently, we can associate differently, we can support candidates of different affiliations, because at the end of the day, we want leaders who will serve this country. That's what we expect. But unfortunately, I think the misinterpretation of what democracy entails and the principles that it entails are not being practiced. One of the things is just the sheer intolerance, that someone putting on a particular color is beaten, a woman is undressed because she's wearing a different color. That's not what democracy demands. It demands that we listen, we tolerate each other, and that even those in power do not use that power to abuse the rights of those who are not in authority. We have seen a number of young people being arrested. We don't know why they are being detained. Our constitution is clear that when you are arrested, within 48 hours, you must be produced in a court of law. We receive calls from moms who are crying, wondering where their children are, and we do not hear official communication from the police to say, these are the people who are in our custody, they will be produced in court at a particular time. For me, that is worrying, because the constitution is made to cater for all of us. Because tomorrow it may be those young people, but the next day it may be the same security agencies who will need the constitution. And that's why it's important to stick to those principles, so that the law is applied equally and we all benefit from those principles that we agree to as a people.
Professor, was this ban appreciated anywhere in Uganda? Because even NRM complained that by banning them from campaigning, their campaign has been curtailed.
Thank you. Well, NRM was shedding crocodile tears, or was it crocodile laughs? Because I know that they knew. I know that, and Mr. Justice Yabakama cannot make that turning point announcement without consulting President Museveni. It is impossible.
Let me give you information, Professor. I interviewed General Mugisha Muntu the next day, and I asked him, did we learn about the ban at the same time, you and I? And it looks like he did, because no letter was written to him, no phone call came to him, so you probably learned at the same time as he learned of the ban.
Anyway, about these elections in a broader perspective, I think this campaign is a sham campaign. It will lead to a sham election, and it will lead to a sham democracy. I'm not missing words. Why? You cannot have a campaign which does not involve physical presence. It doesn't make sense, because when you are campaigning, or for that matter, for the potential voters, they do not look at only the candidate's ideas. They also need to look at his emotional intelligence. How does he conduct himself in public? How does his relational intelligence, his emotional intelligence must be looked at. And as a professional teacher, when we are teaching, that's why we have visual aids. You do not only listen like you are listening to the radio, but you must also see in order to make your assessment correctly. Let me come to the illogical guideline of the Electoral Commission. That was illogical, had no sense at all. To say that you invite, initially was it 70 of your supporters, later it was changed to 200 of your supporters. Now, if they are my supporters, and I invite them because I know them, do I need now to convert them to myself? This can be compared to a crusade, a Christian crusade. When you have a Christian crusade, somewhere in Kamocha grounds like around here, you invite the saved and the non-saved. But mainly, you are targeting the non-saved to convert them. But to say that I invite my supporters, whom I know by names and addresses, to convert them, that's not campaigning. That would be equivalent to a planning meeting for maybe campaigning, but not a campaign platform, because they are already my supporters. Similarly, that's why I was saying, what type of reverend or pastor would you be to say I have a crusade where I will only invite the saved? You invite the unsaved so that they become saved. So this whole thing was a sham to say that you invite people that you know in order to convert who now. That was going to be a strategic campaign meeting, not a campaign. Now coming to these areas that have not been allowed, or where the direct campaigns have been banned. You can see they are mainly urban centers. Yes, that is where COVID is mostly, where people are mostly affected by COVID. But is it only campaigns that are spreading COVID? Because actually those ones are done outside, and we are told by scientists here and abroad that there is less risk when you are outside doors, but it is more risk inside. Now, you see all the arcades are still open. We are going to saloons where people are breathing into our noses while they are treating our hair or working on our hair. There are buses around, public transport, and people are moving where they are closed for 8 to 10 hours. In a closed bus, they are all breathing into each other. Those are still open. We have been teaching in Makerere University, 300 students closed in a room, and you stop people who are even outside. I am not in any way suggesting that having campaigns and public rallies cannot spread COVID, but there are other ways. In other words, this is targeted, and I think there is some reason why these elections were allowed. I have been on record to say that these elections should not have taken place. President Museveni himself did say sometime back in May that having campaigns during COVID was madness. I repeat, that is what he said, that it was madness to hold campaigns when there is COVID. Why he changed his mind, your guess is as good as mine, but my guess is that he found that COVID was convenient. It was an opportunity to limit his rivals, and for him, he can access radios and TVs and other media, but in any case, who doesn't know President Museveni in Uganda? His profile is already known.
Like Semuju.
Like Semuju.
Semuju is known.
But there are those candidates who have no national profile, who needed to be known, not only through the voice, but also to be seen. So I think this was taking advantage to limit and curtail the new entrants who did not have even networks, because when they tried to establish networks during the consultation period before COVID, that was even in 2019, they were stopped. At least I remember Chaguranyi and I think Henry Tumkonde or somebody else, they were stopped to hold consultations. So I think the whole thing of the scientific elections is nothing but a sham election, that is going to lead to a sham democracy.
Okay, we stop for a break, and after the break, I will cross over to the NRM.